everybody, what's going on? It's another episode of the Zapp Comics Radio Podcast. We are powered by Audio Boom, of course, and we are brought to you by Zapp Comics. We have two locations, Wayne, New Jersey, and Manalapan, New Jersey. Enough with that stuff. A lot of times I'm in the store, I like to BS with people about everything, and one of the biggest topics that happens is toys. Toy collecting, action figures, what we played with, what we keep in the box, stuff that we had as a kid, stuff we get now, stuff that's coming out a year from now that we're drooling over. That's way too expensive and too big for us to have, but we still want it. So Johnny is a toy nut, and the biggest one I've ever met. Johnny's like how I was like 15 years ago, but I stopped, and Johnny just keeps running. And then we get, of course, Craig Edelson from, also known as Craig from Craig Stuff.
Craig of Craig Stuff, that's what they call me.
And he's a toy guy. He's a little bit younger than us, more of a pup. How old are you?
24.
24.
Oh,
you're younger than us. But so the 80s. I mean, obviously, we didn't realize what we were living in. We were just the toys were coming out. We were in when Star Wars came out and everything went to 3 3/4 inches. Mm-hmm. Everything changed.
Pretty much when we were born.
Yeah, we were born into it. Because I remember being little. And my brother was 3 years older than me. He wasn't really into toys. He was into like Matchbox and Hot Wheels and wrestling figures. But I remember he had like Grayskull and some of the He-Man guys. And I remember playing with them. And my best friend who lived across the street had every He-Man guy. And it was one of those type of things where if he had it, I wouldn't get it because I'm just going to play with his stuff when it comes over. But I was a Transformer nut when I was younger. But I moved. See, the problem is it's probably different for you guys. You guys, this is a big area. I'm from a very, very small town in the middle of Massachusetts, okay? The school I went to when I was younger was called the Dyer Ave School, okay? It was a little building. It had, literally 6 rooms, and it had 1 room for kindergarten and 1 room for 1st through 5th grade. It had a tiny little gymnasium, which was also where we ate lunch, and a little library. That's all it had. And we waited outside the school, outside. You waited outside. The door was on the outside. There was no hallway. You waited outside to go in, and it was probably 20 kids per class, and that was the entire school. It was it was weird. It was a section of town that there was a bigger school in town, but we went to that. So I was only exposed to the 20 kids that I had with me, and we were into Transformers. I mean, I loved Gremlins and all that stuff, but I think why I was into Transformers so much was because of the Dinobots. I was a huge dinosaur nut as a kid. The Dinobots came out, I lost my mind.
Grimlock. Yeah,
Grimlock and Swoop and Snarl and everything. So I loved the Transformers. I was diehard into Transformers. I liked He-Man too. It was cool. But when I moved in 3rd grade, which was 1985, to the next town over, which is East Bridgewater, and it was like a regular sized school, and they were all into G.I. Joe, which I had never even really seen before, and it just changed everything. And I was from 85 to right up until 80, early junior high school. I was in probably 88, 89. I bought every G.I. Joe. I had everything. I think I had everything from 85 through 89 that came out G.I. Joe wise. Every vehicle, every figure, and there was tons of them. I was still into Star Wars. I like Star Wars, but G.I. Joe was my main thing. Muscles came out. There was so many toy lines back then. They were just everywhere.
Well, yeah, that was the thing about it. I mean, it wasn't the articulation as much as the breadth of different stuff that came out. Yeah. I mean, toy companies made new stuff.
Every TV show had its toy line.
But even... Because now they really relaxed it where it was if it's a TV show, they can't really, they did it a little bit, but now it's movies. But then they would come up with their own stuff before there was a cartoon.
Oh yeah,
you had Transformers a toy first, or
Transformers were 2 or 3 different toy lines. They kind of put them together, molded it. The cartoon came out. And then that's why the first couple lines of Transformers, they're perfect cars and robots. I mean, and whatever they were perfect. And later on, they didn't look right as whatever they turned into, or the robot looked kind of weird. The early ones, they looked exact. They were perfect. That's why everybody, I think, is so sensitive and appreciative of the G1 stuff, especially the die-cast stuff. The Transformers were amazing. The cartoons fun. G.I. Joe, I said...
That was the same, though, right? Wasn't that a toy line first?
G.I. Joe?
Or no?
No, G.I. Joe was a doll. They were
the big dolls. Yeah,
and they reinvented it with... See, what happened, I don't know if you know... Are you familiar with Migos?
Yes. Well,
okay.
From comic book men, actually.
Okay, Migos were the biggest thing in the 70s. Migos were...
Well, that was pretty much all you had.
Yeah, that was the standard thing you had. They were a doll size, because they matched up with the Barbies with the girls. And Star Wars came out, and they're like, well, we want it to be very vehicle and playset driven. Like, well, listen, we can't make a Millennium Falcon in scale with a Mego. It's going to be the size of like a Power Wheel.
So that's why they did the 3.
So Mego passed on it. And this is what changed everything. Mego, which was the biggest toy company at the time for action figure type things, passed on it, and a little company known as Kenner almost like stepped in it and got the license for it. And they made them 3 3/4. They did that early bird thing.
Yep.
Early bird gift certificate, package you could send away for it, and it changed everything because that's what made everything, the toy aisles back then, it was all like vehicles and playsets. That's what you had because you wanted to build the worlds. And then in G.I. Joe followed suit with it, and He-Man was a little bit bigger, but they still did the same thing with all the accessories and the castles and everything like that. So we grew up on your big Christmas item or holiday item or birthday item was a playset. Like I remember getting the USS Flag for Christmas, and the box was bigger than it's huge. Because the thing's like 8 feet long or whatever.
And that's like Castle Grayskull.
Yeah. Do you ever watch the Goldbergs? He has one in his basement.
Yeah,
almost on every episode you can see it.
It's bigger than Grayskull.
Oh, it's
huge.
Huge.
Bigger than Grayskull. Yeah, it was.
It's huge.
For me, I had the Ghostbusters Firehouse, but it was my cousin's because he grew up in the 80s, and I had all the hand-me-downs. So I had the Ghostbusters Firehouse, and I had a Batcave, and those were my big playsets.
Yeah, it was still going on when you came around. Like
I don't think I had like a big Power Rangers playset. There wasn't.
They didn't make them.
No,
they
didn't.
Megazords.
They kind of stopped.
You guys grew up in the role playing aspect because they were like live action. So you guys had the morphers and the swords. We didn't have that. We had. Our big thing was the vehicles. You guys had Megazords, well, obviously, but for Power Rangers, you guys had the phasers and the swords, where we didn't. And then it kind of it shifted a bit. But when they re-released Star Wars in the 90s, it became vehicle driven again, and it shifted. And then like all the Marvel, well, before that, all the Marvel and the DC toy lines were coming out because I wasn't into Secret Wars or Superpowers because I wasn't into the super. I wasn't into comics until later on. But my friends had them. Like I remember the Hall of Justice. I remember the Batmobile. I remember the Brainiac and all. They were cool looking, but I just never had any. They were boring to me. The superheroes were boring stuff.
I was pretty much like I had every line.
Well, see, the problem I had was I made a deal with my mother. She's like, listen, you can't keep everything because I wanted to keep everything. So she let me cut out the front of the boxes of all the G.I. Joe vehicles, and I had all the cards, the file cards for G.I. Joe. But if I got a G.I. Joe vehicle, she let me cut out the front of the box and keep the box, and I would hang it up in my basement on the wall because I wanted to keep the instructions, the sticker book. She's like, no, you can't keep everything. We don't have anything for it. So she made a deal with me. She would neatly cut the box out. So I was so obsessive with it, I had to keep everything.
Yeah, I don't think I was really. I mean. I don't have any of my old toys, unfortunately, which really disappoints me because
I have all my stuff. It's in my attic.
My parents gave everything away. I don't have any of my Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles. I was really into Street Sharks, which was one of the spin-offs of Ninja Turtles. I loved those things. I had a million of them, and they're all gone. And it makes me sad now that I'm older and I'm back into that kind of stuff, and it's all gone. Like even my Ghostbusters Firehouse, that's gone.
Yeah, I hate everything. I know Johnny still has all of it.
Yeah, I have most of my stuff. I wanted to, because I must have been, I had to have been around between 3 and 4 when I started, because I remember getting Star Wars. I remember getting the Death Star for whatever, and I started with Star Wars. Was my thing.
I remember Grayskull. Grayskull was the centerpiece for no matter what toy line I had, was Grayskull, because the way it folded out.
Yeah.
And it was
the drawbridge.
There was levels on it, so you could use it for anything you wanted to use. So when I was younger, and it can take a beating. I mean, the accessory fell off, but that thing, it's solid plastic, so you could use it for whatever. And I mean, what was it? The Dungeons and Dragons one that
I had that. Yeah, it's the dungeon.
That was cool. I remember I traded. I forget what I traded to get it. I traded figures to get it. I remember. My mother was so mad because I think the toys were a little bit newer, but I wanted it. Because if you missed it back then, it was gone. Like, if you didn't get that vehicle or that toy, like, in whatever, like, say 1986, the G.I. Joe came out, and then it's 1988, and you missed it, you can't go get it. Like, you can't find it. Like, nobody had it. You couldn't, unless they reissue it, which sometimes happened, you weren't getting. And they used to come with, like, a booklet. I remember the Return of the Jedi booklet, and It was almost like a catalog, and we used to read it over and over and over, and circle the ones that the Sears catalog every Christmas would come out, and I would circle the toys I wanted, in the video games,
Well, I remember, for He-Man, like, you didn't know what was coming out, and
it was cool going to the store. That's the thing too. When you would go to the store as a kid, when you'd walk around the corner, you would just see this like a new section of them. You'd be like, oh my god, what is this? And you would flip if it wasn't on the back of the box, you didn't know it existed.
Well,
did you have like a big book, like a Toys R Us big book?
Well, they didn't have that.
The Sears catalog.
Yeah, Sears catalog, J.C. Penney's.
Okay. Yeah, Toys R Us wasn't. It was Child World was a big store back then.
Okay.
Well, we had here it was Toys R Us.
I didn't have Toys R Us.
See, they up there they had Child World,
right here,
which
it was Child World.
Well, there
was a Toys R Us in my. It was like too far away. The Child World was very
There were
local.
a few here. Like there was one at Garden State where the food court is. Like where you used to go down,
okay,
like
so
where that circle is. It was in the it used to Garden State used to be all outside.
Okay.
And then and it used to be in the mall. And then when it all closed, because then there used to be a Garden State, a Child World over where Bye Bye Baby and Bed Bath and Beyond, Home Depot. Okay. I think it's where the Staples or whatever is, the Marshalls. That's where but that came out. That was like in the late '80s when it opened. It was only there for a couple of years and then it closed. But yeah, because I remember going there looking for G.I. Joes and getting that from there, and I remember the Transformers there.
Never stepped foot in a Child World. Well, I stepped foot in what has become.
Yeah.
If you ever get a chance, Craig, go online and search like aisle displays if you can find them from the back in the day. Because the thing about Star Wars was that packaging was like jet black, and it was massive. Like it was literally like now, like when you work at Toys R Us, you'll get like maybe a 4-foot section or end cap, and that's like the big thing. Like the feature shops you guys have now, that was an aisle. So when you walked into the store, Toys R Us
more like a grocery store.
Yeah, Toys R Us were all aisles. They had A's, B's, and C's. In aisle 7 or 8C, depending on the volume of the store, was the action figure aisle, and that's where you went at Toys R Us. Child World, I don't know if it was aisle, but I don't know the numbers. But I worked at Toys R Us for years, so I know. But you would walk around the corner and like you would see like 20 to 30 feet of like it would just be like all Star Wars. And and the overstocks, it was just like Millennium Falcons and TIE Fighters and you could never have enough because they would sell so fast. I remember going crazy waiting to get Snake Eyes. He came with his the wolf.
Timberwolf.
With Timber, the wolf. Yeah. And I never saw it. And we had in my town it was called King's Castle. It was a toy store shaped like a castle, but it was the entrance to like a mini like Six Flags type thing. It was very small, but it was almost like the carnivals we have around here.
Yeah.
It's like that, but it was permanent.
Okay.
But they had a toy store in front of it. It was cool. It had like a drawbridge and stuff like that. And it was really expensive, but they had everything. And I remember going there, and I remember a guy brought out the case of G.I. Joe figures because the woman was looking for one, and she gave him a Snake Eyes. And I remember I was so nervous. I remember going up, I'm like, can I do you have another one of those? He goes, yeah, sure, kid. And I remember him giving me one. That was the first time I ever. You don't know how they come. I'm like, do they? You don't know they come in cases because I never saw. You don't know what they. Unless you're there, you don't know how it comes out. And I remember him handing it to me, and I remember and that was the only time I ever in my entire like young adult life like that buying toys ever saw a Snake Eyes on the shelf was when she gave it to me. And I never had a Storm Shadow. I think I traded for it because Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were impossible to find.
Yeah,
I remember getting Zartan, and Zartan, I was like the king of the school for a week because nobody knew what Zartan was.
Well, down here, you used to find, but I remember...
It's different here.
Yeah, see, we had more, you could go to Kmart, because I remember, like, my mom used to say, because she used to go for me, like for Christmas, whatever, like, she said I would go to Kmart, I would go here and looking for all the...
And Caldors,
yeah, but like, to look for all the Star Wars figures and stuff.
If this one doesn't have it, you can go to another one. So we didn't have Highway. Like, I'm in a tiny little town, like... we had Kmart, we had Ames, we had Bradley's, we had Zayre's, we had
Caldor,
like all these department stores.
Well, Stearns used to have
I didn't have Stearns
toys. Not a lot, but Stearns had toys. Sears had toys.
Just the name Stearns. I don't think I've ever, maybe as a kid, but like Stearns.
My Sears didn't have a toy
really?
section.
Even as a kid?
No.
Was it a big Sears?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was just a standard one, but it didn't have.
But like the one at Willowbrook, that had a toy section on the back side, because the back used to be where, like, on the one side where, I guess like the middle back entrance, like facing the highway part, and you go in through there, and there was it was a couple aisles or whatever, and then you had all like the exclusives, like the Droid Factory or the G.I. Joe. They had a whole bunch of exclusives.
We would just order that through the catalog.
Well, they had a thing. Like, they had the stuff there.
Sears only, and you get it.
But they also had regular stuff. I remember the Voltron stuff there and everything like that.
And the funny thing about that, if you ordered a figure, say you ordered C-3PO, if they didn't have C-3PO, they would just send you like an Ugnaught. And be like, oh well, like, and you didn't like know how to like change. The exchange rate wasn't like the same as now. You can't just go fight it. They would just be like, and the parent would be like.
And this was through the catalog. You're saying if you ordered it.
Well, you know what? There's two.
They would have them pictured, and you can order it. But of course, they didn't have it. They came in cases for them, so it's not like they.
So they would just say action figure.
Yeah.
They used to be over here,
because
like
it's all the same item number.
Yep.
Whatever. So.
Where Home Goods is. They had service merchandise.
Yeah, we had service merchandise.
Yeah, you do thing. It's like a store, but it's a catalog. So you go, you say, hey, I want this, and then they would bring it to you. There was another one like that over where by Bye Bye Baby. I forget that it wasn't service merchandise. It was another one. And like basically you go in, you look in the catalog, say I want this, and then there was like a conveyor belt, and then they would put it on there, and then you get it.
It's funny.
They hold the catalog. Right over my head.
You couldn't order.
I remember the Land's End catalogs.
Yeah, you couldn't order anything, like.
There was no online.
And like if you missed it, you missed it. That was a big thing. If you missed it, the way they phased things out so fast, it was done. Unless you stumbled across it in a secondhand store, or like every now and then there'll be like not like a pawn shop, but like a little store in town that would like resell stuff like old TVs or whatever. You'd go in there and they might have like on their pegs when they have their pegs, they might have like a random Thundercat or something like that. But when Toy Works, you remember KB?
Yes.
Well, they had Toy Works. I don't know if they had them around here. They were like
the standalone ones.
The standalone ones that were not in a mall.
Yeah.
They were in strips.
Yeah.
The one by me, that's where when I really got into the collecting bug in the late '80s, early '90s, that had everything. So I remember when you do roto holds, which you guys do, obviously. Yep, yeah. When the new ad's coming out on Sunday morning, you had to hold it. And I remember they would open at noon, and my mother would bring me there. I remember getting the Toy Biz DC figures because they had them pictured, with Hawkman and all them, and they would make sure they had them, and nobody else was. I was kind of collecting before the entire world was really collecting, so I would go there, I would get them all, and I would keep them in the package, But I remember seeing like random Thundercats there, that they just from the last wave, like the Predator figures and Batman Returns, and I remember. Action figure toy was it not the Action Figure Digest, the other one,
Tomarts,
the Toy News, that one there. It was, remember it had the price guide in it, but it was only at half the guide. It was quarterly, and I remember waiting for it. I used to get the stuff out of the cereal box. I collected everything. I didn't. That's my problem with when I get into stuff. I want everything. I don't just want to focus on one line. I buy everything.
But also, you're saying it's funny. You're saying with that with ours at our time, everything. On every package, it said collect them all. But not really, because you can't collect them all because they give all the thing like they wanted you to buy them all.
Well, now they just have like one little toy line and you're done. They don't have
and they short pack this, they short pack that. You know what I mean? They make it difficult to get this one, whatever like that.
Well, the funny thing is, I always got for Christmas the same figure. Like I had 3 Bespin Han Solos. I had like 4 Ugnaughts. I had 5 Lobots because when they would go to the Christmas shop, they would Star Wars. They're like, he likes Star Wars. They would just whatever was on the shelf, and it was all the same figure because they were peg warmers. They would call them.
Yeah, no,
and they just had the same thing. That's all you got. And I'm like, another one of these, and you didn't like return them like you do now because you didn't have receipts or gift receipts and. The way I was brought up, it's a gift. You just take it. You don't return things. So we never returned anything, like they do now. Now everybody's like, if they like it, they're like, I'll just bring it back, It'll scan, and they just take it because they're not going to say no to you. They'll give you store credit. They didn't give you like store credit. I don't.
Yeah, it was very difficult to.
It was returning something was like a big deal.
It's funny because how easy it is to return something right now.
Yeah, because they're very
pieces. It's like
customer sensitive.
I don't want it anymore.
So to go on to the collecting aspect though. Like, we're the first generation that kind of kept it with us. Because the generation before that, us didn't really have collecting.
Well, there was nothing. I mean, there was toy collectors. There's always, those old, like, Lionel trains and stuff like that. But there were toys, people moved on, and there was a small group, but also there wasn't the toys, like the action figures. There wasn't.
No.
I mean, you had the Migos, you had, like, G.I. Joe, but there wasn't much of that. The only people that are older than us that weren't into that are the Matchbox guys.
Yeah, because they were
that's
built before that.
Yeah, because that was from the 60s. But
we had it, and we ran with it
Well, that was part of our life.
Yeah, part of our life.
And I mean, we actually played with these things.
And then even though we left it when we went to high school, it was still rolling. So the Ghostbuster crowd, the Ninja Turtle crowd, those crowds kept it going. And everything kind of died out in the early 90s. And then all of a sudden, when they had the Marvel stuff came out, all the Toy Biz really amped it up. It was like
the X-Men
cartoon really changed things.
The Toy Biz ones, they're horrible figures, but
no, but I think I know. Like I had some Spider-Man.
I think Toy Biz made everything Marvel.
KB was packed with those. They had so many of those things.
That X-Men cartoon really amped people up to it, and that's when the comic book boom was too, because that was when like the new X-Men, the Jim Lee #1 was coming out. All that stuff was really booming, and then they left to do Image. So the collector thing kicked in when the Spawn figures came out. That really changed everything with collectors and the speculators. So you went from collecting them, playing with them, keeping them around, because the Power Ranger kind of knocked everything out of proportion, because you guys weren't collecting. You just wanted to play with them because they were accessories. Yeah. So the Ninja Turtles was like the last collector line almost, like where people
was action figure
friendly, and then the Power Ranger thing was so big it kind of shook the world as far as you guys, and you guys ripped everything open, and then Pokemon came out like that, which is fine, but
which really, in my opinion, wasn't much of a toy line. Yeah, I mean it was trading cards and the video games.
But that's what you guys were into. Yeah. And then the Star Wars thing brought everybody back in.
Yeah, that was
us, because we were late high school, early college, and Star Wars was coming out, and they were throwbacks. They were they were going anal about the long sabers.
Well, yeah, short saber, the thing on the hand, a full circle, half a circle.
On the Boba Fett.
Oh Lord.
They were looking for every variation. Like, oh, this Boba Fett only has like half a moon on his hand, and the other, and it was before the internet really boomed, so you didn't know what people had. Like, you didn't know how many were out there, and everybody was buying them. That's when I was working at Toys R Us. I remember setting the section for Star Wars, and it was a big deal because it was like. Kenner had just got bought out by Hasbro, and it was like this big rumbling, but they still had the Kenner logos on the packages.
Yeah, just for because they were more.
They kept it on for a while.
They put in they did the vintage.
Stuff.
Which I loved. I thought it was a great.
Yeah, and I just remember the rumblings of it, and it just changed because Spawn really brought in. The Spawn window was short, but it was so big because starting lineups. Where the adults were buying. Adults were buying starting lineups and reselling them. They were so expensive. Remember when McGuire broke the record? Everybody wanted that one, and the Sosa, and there was 2-packs and the college ones. Starting lineups were huge, and then they just kind of went away because they weren't really good looking. Everybody wanted the Spawns, and then he got the license for McFarlane got the license for baseball and football and whatever. He did a couple lines where they didn't have any logo on them because they weren't registered by the MLB or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then when his stuff hit, it changed everything. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, everybody was buying toys, whether it was a sports guy or music guy or movie guy or us, we're action figure people. We were all buying it, and it exploded. It was kind of like the comic boom. It just exploded.
The Spawn stuff, I mean, the original stuff was like figures. They were like like you could actually play with them, And then
but
they kind of
collectible.
Well, yeah, there was.
Well, the first line wasn't. They were smaller.
Yeah.
And they kind of had like features.
They had action. Yeah.
There was like a dungeon playset thing.
Yeah.
There was like a car.
Malbolgia.
Malbolgia was the second one.
Was Spawn really popular with kids?
Spawn was.
Yeah, he was.
Kids, with
kids.
Everybody was.
Spawn was the biggest thing on Earth for like a while.
For me,
Spawn was the number one selling comic book for 8 years.
But I mean, what age group? Even the younger kids, because I didn't know anybody who really knew anything about Spawn.
He evolved, and then they became more. They make better looking figures, but they stopped being figures to almost like articulated statues.
Yeah.
And that was the always thing on him. That's what kind of eventually people got lost because people want the look good and the articulation. They, and he kind of went away from that.
Too, is when the speculation comic book bubble burst in the 90s, that went with it. That crowd left. But he had the sports picks was what kept it going. Mm-hmm. That's like right now the sports pick stuff's dead.
Oh, completely. But
the Walking Dead is what's going. Mm-hmm. So he, not meaning to, keeps having the hottest thing and without any effort almost.
But if you also give that, he helped spawn a lot of those guys left.
McFarlane Toys, all the guys at McFarlane Toys, most of them are NECA now. NECA came out of McFarlane.
And the Four Horsemen.
The Four Horsemen came out of McFarlane.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So
the Four Horsemen sculpt the Matty Collector figures.
Yeah, I've seen them.
That's Four Horsemen. NECA, most of those guys, they that's why they got the movie Maniacs. That McFarlane used to make all that stuff. They left and did that, and then now the sports pick thing's dead. But now you got those Walking Dead figures, which are so mainstream that especially overseas, they sell like crazy. So he still goes. It used to be called Todd Toys. The first line of figures was Todd Toys, but then they figured out an old doll line was called Todd Toys, so he changed it to McFarlane Toys, which actually sounds better.
I agree.
If you look at the first series of Spawn, they say Todd Toys on the package.
Oh.
You know, if you go back to like saying the way things changed with the Star Wars, you remember the instant rebate?
Yes, instant rebate changed.
That was the big thing because I remember I was in college when the Star Wars came out, and it was a pain to find them because I mean everybody was really into it because it's a new stuff and everything like that. And then they had the second series, and I guess it was kind of going. Remember it's a series. It was the one with the robot that picked. It was in the special edition. He picked up the rods or whatever. It was just some weird robot. It was that way.
I don't know if you remember when they re-released Star Wars in the theaters, but they tweaked them. Do you remember that?
No.
In the late '90s,
I have
they reissued them all, and they put them in.
They put new scenes.
And they added new scenes like. In the cantina and on Tatooine, there'd be creatures in the background that weren't there before.
Is this when they added Hayden Christensen, or was this before that?
This is before this. This is the first one, before the new ones.
Like, the space scenes, they made them clean and bright.
This is where Greedo shot first.
Yeah.
This is where they changed that.
They changed it. But, and also, like, Tatooine, you know Tatooine is?
Of course.
If you watch the original one, it's like, there's nothing there.
There's nobody out in the street.
But in the new ones, it's full of like creatures and rontos and dewbacks. The original one wasn't like that.
When they're outside the canteen.
Yeah, when they're coming into Mos Eisley.
Mos Eisley.
Yeah, and they tweak different scenes. And
the Jabba scene they put in.
The Jabba scene they actually changed completely, and it bothered me because that was one of my favorite scenes in all the movies was the Jabba scene. It was really dark and dreary. There was a certain song to it, and they made it look like the Muppets.
No, I'm talking about the one in Star Wars in New Hope. That wasn't in the movie, and then they put it back in.
Oh, when they put Jabba. Jabba the Hutt was originally filmed for New Hope. It was a guy like a big furry suit.
Because they didn't know what they were going to do with him.
And Han Solo walks around him. So later, they didn't put that scene in. So later on, they go, we want to put the Jabba scene in. But they're like, wait a minute, Jabba's a big... So they make Han step on him. And they just like shift him on the thing, and it's horrible. Yeah. And Boba Fett's standing there. It wasn't needed. Like, it's a cool... I understand.
If I watched my version, would I see this or not?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yes.
What version is yours?
I have like a DVD set, I guess.
They don't have... Our version isn't on any of the DVDs right now.
I have it on DVD because I got it off of a Laserdisc copy.
Yeah. But it's either on VHS or whatever to have the non-touch
But he redid them again. I think he added or took some more stuff away. Yeah,
like
with the Hayden Christensen. No, that wasn't because the prequels hadn't come out yet.
Okay.
This is before the prequels.
Okay. So
and these were like number one movies.
This was like when did the first one come out? 2001. Or is it...
No, this one. These
episode 1.
99.
99. Okay.
This is like 97-ish.
Yeah, because when I was in college.
But the cool thing about it though is they released them and they were the number one movies in the world. Yeah. Like they just that's why they just. It was cool.
Yeah, I mean, even though the Phantom Menace is one of they consider so bad or whatever, it's one of the highest grossing.
Yeah, but I'm saying the reissues when they put them out, they were number one for like weeks. The old movies because they were special editions.
Yeah,
but you know what too? Because people wanted to be there. Cool. People wanted to watch the movies in the theater.
Yeah, and anybody wanted to give them something new.
That's why I went to see Phantom Menace when they re-released it in 3D.
Yeah,
I can proudly say I was one of the few people to go see the Phantom Menace.
Well, did you see it when it was? Did you see it when it was in the theater?
Yes, I went.
The original.
No, actually.
Oh.
I think my brother and my dad went to see it. I was at a friend's house. I was 91.
Oh, you could have saw
it. No, yeah, I could have.
Yeah, okay.
I think I saw the other ones. I think the Phantom Menace specifically I didn't see in theater because I think it was at a friend's house and my dad took my brother or something like that. So, but whatever. I've seen it.
No, it's funny how like we forget.
I don't hate it as much as most people do.
Yeah,
I love Watto.
But you grew up, or you're younger. I think if I listen, I call BS on all these people who hate Ewoks. Because I was 6 years old in 1983 when Jedi came out. I was obsessed with the Ewoks.
Ewoks are great.
I got a lot of people my age and a little bit younger say, yeah, I hate the Ewoks. No, you didn't when you were a kid. That's bull. Because 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you love the Ewoks. I don't want to hear you hated them because they hate them now. But when they were kids, they loved them. I don't care what you say.
This is how I feel about people who hate. I know everybody hates Jar Jar.
Jar Jar's awful.
I know. Yeah. But as a kid, I love Jar Jar. He cracked me up.
I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something. I worked at Toys R Us in the peak of that. I couldn't give Jar Jar things away, and kids hated him. So
really?
you're an exception to the rule. I mean, I break that to you.
I'm not. I know, but as a kid, I still don't think he's the greatest cat. But I don't hate him like everybody hates him.
Well, you should.
Okay. I kind of just. I don't know.
There's no need.
He makes
for that
me
character.
giggle a little bit, but then it's like. I'm gonna get hate so much for this.
Oh,
because...
we hate you right now. We hate you.
But Watto. When you come by some Jedi pod racer stuff.
So bad.
To go back to the action figures.
Yeah, thanks for killing the mood.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say with the rebate, because I was collecting them, whatever, and you couldn't get them. Like, there was so many pig warmers, because probably when you were there, that was like...
And to go back to that, what they would do, you got to understand something. When Star Wars was so big and it was so popular, we would sell out. We would get pallets of them with thousands of figures, and they would within days they'd sell through. Like I'd put out like 80 to 100 like Landos, they'd be gone. The problem is I remember the Hammerheads was the peg warmer, and everybody wanted him, but he wasn't as big as people thought they were, so they made too many of him. But I remember them packaging up just cases of Hammerheads, and they took away probably like 80 cases just from my small store alone in Massachusetts. Like, I can't imagine. They would reissue them as a two-pack in clearance stores or like overseas.
That's
so they would
repackage them now for some of our peg warmers, I feel
like.
Now they just mark them down as low as they can. They don't do that anymore. Now they just mark the crap. They wouldn't mark things down back then. They would just, now they do. Like when you guys get rid of your seasonal stuff, you just mark it to like 0. Yeah. They didn't do that. You would pack it away. You would pack it away and put it put it up in the storeroom and bring it back out the next year.
Yeah.
Now they just blow it out.
No, I was just saying with what they had was an instant rebate, because like you said, these things just packed up. They were horrible. You couldn't. There was never any new stuff and everything. I wasn't into it anymore. I was getting out of it. And if it wasn't for that, that's what brought me to bring them out, because I got more figures, because I wasn't going to do it. And then what you could do is you brought it up, you paid for it, and then there was a sticker on that they put on it, and they would scan it. And I forget how much it was for, but basically they were like $1.50 each figure. So you can get all the ones that you needed. It cleared out all the back inventory, and then it brought the new stuff in, and it brought people in saying, okay, you know. And
now they would just do a buy two get one free or buy one. They didn't do that back then.
Which I noticed doesn't sell most of that crap anyway.
But it kick-started collecting again. It cleared out all that stuff, and people that stopped buying the Star Wars stuff started buying again, and it really... And then they did the midnight release for...
Yeah, when we did the Phantom Menace, they did a midnight release.
I've heard about that, yeah.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, I was there for Phantom Menace, and I had moved to New York. A much bigger store for episode 2 and episode 3. I was there, and I remember doing the crowd control and setting it up, the big feature shops, and we would fill up the entire feature shop with figures, and then anything left we would just dump them in shopping carts. So when the line would come in,
you'd go and refill.
No, we would just peg it, and we would just have the shopping carts parked there, and just say, and we'd keep an empty one next to them so they could dig through it, put it in there, and it was all gone. Everything was just gone. But to be fair, the figures were like $4 or $5 a piece. Now it's like they're expensive.
Yeah.
And Marvel Legends, which really put a lot of collectors into it, they were like $6.99. And then they got the build.
Really?
They were $6.99. Mm-hmm. They came with a comic book.
Yeah.
Because they did a Spider-Man line. The first line.
Spider-Man Classics, I think.
The Spider-Man line. It was one line, and it had Spider-Man, like a black Spider-Man.
Was there a Daredevil?
Daredevil, I think, and there was that's Spider Arachnid Spider or whatever it is. I think that was in the first line. But that came out. It was so successful. That's where Legends came from, and Toy Biz was doing it. And then they did the Build-A-Figure. The first Build-A-Figure was Galactus.
Genius, yeah.
And it was only $7.99.
That's
you got a huge 6-inch figure.
It's more than double that.
A book
right now.
And the Build-A-Figure. And then now they're like $25 a piece.
Well, it was funny because how many years ago they did when they started doing Target had the Hulk line.
That's what kind of
killed it. It was like $14, and
it was like 2006, 2007. It was literally double the price.
Yeah, people went crazy. They were like, "I'm not doing it." There was so many stuff left over, and those are the ones that are hardest to find because people refused to get them. And for a while, they were at Target forever.
They went from $8. Yeah. They might have been $9 at the time to literally like $14, $15. And I'm like when you get the DC Direct figures that come out now, like the Arkham Asylum figures, the $24.99, when
they used to be $14.
In the 90s, they were $14.99. Yeah. That was like a premium figure. I remember getting like DC made like a standard Hal Jordan Green Lantern or the Golden Age Green Lantern. I remember they were $14.99, and spending that on a figure was like a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're $25. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous. Because like 2 years ago, they were $21.99. They keep jumping and jumping and jumping. Like, we used to get Star Wars figures for $4 or $5. You know, if every now and then we'll get a figure in with an old price tag on it. It's funny to see how much they were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, how much is that Megazord you were talking about earlier?
That you bought like $70, $80.
Yeah, that was like a $40 toy back in the day.
Yeah,
you know,
and it's not even much of a remake of the original.
Well, probably
it's still a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. The flag, that was probably $100.
The USS Flag, which was the big G.I. Joe's aircraft carrier, was I think $100. And that was a very pricey toy. That was like a big deal.
That's
but
like,
it was huge.
But that would be like a $1,000 toy now. The Hot Toy, like in scale Batmobile, that's basically what it would cost, and it's ridiculous.
How much is that?
How much is the Ninja Turtle lair?
100. There's a couple different versions of it, but the most expensive is probably like $160, I think.
$160.
Something like that.
How much is the AT-ATs when they come out?
We haven't had one of those in a long time. But
I think last time they were like $120.
I know
they were
Falcon, when they did the Kenner reissue one, that was $250.
The AT-AT from the 90s was $80. So it was almost like double.
This was probably $100.
Because what they did was when they clearanced them, they were $10. I bought like 10 AT-ATs. I wanted a whole army AT-ATs, and I never was able to do it. But I sold them for like $100 a piece, you know. But they made them $10, and they eventually made them $20. And I literally did the ordering for my store. I ordered 300 of them, and we would make pallets of them. And going back, I wish I bought them all, but you didn't know. I mean, who knew they were going to be like this? But I remember the Rancor. It was like $5. Now they're like $60. They're like $60. I think we have one in the store. Yeah, it's like $60 in there. But so as far as the collecting aspect on your end, you guys came in with Power Rangers. Your generation was a Power Ranger generation.
Yeah.
And it's not that you didn't care about collecting. You guys were video game babies. You got also into the cards. Like, we didn't have cards. We collected baseball cards. You guys had Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, Magic cards, whatever. You know, we had Magic in school, but you had to be like diehard into it to play it. But
complicated game.
Pokemon and Power Rangers changed the game for your generation, and obviously the price of plastic going up too. But you guys don't play with toys. Like, you know what I mean? Your generation does not play with toys. You guys go from diapers to video games.
I mean, Legos was big for me.
Legos almost went under. Star Wars saved Legos.
I heard Bionicle was
Bionicle and Star Wars saved Legos because they licensed it. They made with the license.
That's what they did.
The standard. I remember when the Star Wars Legos first hit, it was a big deal.
That's what the thing. Like, people are always like, "Well, Legos. When I was a kid, we just did whatever you wanted, and you could just build whatever." That's a lie. Because I remember having the firehouse. Like, you still had a thing. You didn't just do whatever. I mean, of course, it's one thing you could build whatever you want, but there was still stuff like that you picked.
It was themed. Yeah. I remember having like the police station and the main street. I had all that stuff. I mean, the thing about Legos weren't like expensive as they are now.
Yeah, no,
they're crazy. Yeah,
but it's all
and it makes you feel bad when because as a kid, I used to take my Legos, I'd take them apart when I was done. After, I just played it for a little while, and I'd be done with it. And I'd throw it in a bin, and I just have like a million Legos. And it just makes me now think about it, and I feel bad. It's like some of these sets are probably like this X-Wing I have is probably worth something.
But that's what makes the stuff valuable now. Exactly, it's because that's what people did. Exactly, you know what I mean? That's why all this stuff is, because people I play with it. You know, I mean, it wasn't until, really, like you said, like that late 90s into not late 90s, late 80s, like around 90 is when people, because it was the comic books that were people that are doing the comic books started taking that concept and doing, the toys also. Because I really put always to Batman. When Batman came out,
because it got that 66 crowd back.
Yeah, well, and also because they kept pushing. Well, look at the comic books. The comic books, how expensive comic books are. And then people were like, and look, the new comic books, we could do that too. And they kind of do that with the toys too.
It started with baseball cards.
Yeah.
Because someone sold like the Mickey Mantles from the 50s and the Honus Wagners, you know, the rarest ones from the tobacco cards. They started selling at record prices, and everybody's like, oh, the grandparents, like, I have these cards, and I still have them, and they had all the old cards. So in 85, 86, 87, the collecting boom for baseball cards skyrocketed with like Jose Canseco rookie. Everybody went nuts for them. And what really changed the game was 89 Ken Griffey Jr. rookie. Upper Deck, new company, it's state of the art, they're rare, they're collector only, $150, $200 card. And then when eBay hit and the internet hit in the mid 90s, it dropped like a rock, because if your card store didn't have it, you're like, oh, we can't find it. When you went to eBay, there was thousands and thousands of listings, and it dropped like $20. And the eBay killed the card market, so they started doing like, you get autographs in there, you get pieces of jerseys in there, you get dirt in there, you get like, you know, the guy's ear here and there. So you get all this stuff in the card. The card started, and then, like Johnny said, 89 Batman got such that crowd, that original Batman crowd in, and like, oh, I had all these books when I was a kid, and like when me and Johnny were collecting in the 80s, the Silver Age was only 20 years ago. So when you guys right now are going crazy for the first Deadpool and stuff like that, we could have bought like an X-Men #1 for $200 in the 80s, but I that was a lot of money for me. I wish I did. But that's
how much does it sell for now?
Oh, thousands and thousands, depending on the condition. But obviously, it's crazy. But I remember seeing these books. I'm like, it was expensive.
Well, it's just so we bought the X-Force off the rack.
Oh yeah, I remember waiting for X-Force 1 to come out, because they all had different cards. They had a Deadpool card or X-Force card or whoever else.
Oh, well, New Mutants. I'm sorry, because New Mutants.
98. Yeah, but it wasn't even a big book.
No.
100 was a big book, because 100 was the last issue of New Mutants, and it kicked off X-Force, which was, they gave Rob Liefeld his series, X-Force. It started with X-Men.
When X-Force first started, and I'm just going off topic again, I guess a little bit, but when X-Force first started, was it Cable, Deadpool? Was it like that group?
Well, Deadpool was a secondary character.
Yeah,
Cable.
Okay.
Cable got all like kind of the New Mutants guys.
Yeah.
And you know they kind of
because I know like the Uncanny X-Force group.
Yeah.
Which is like Deadpool, Wolverine.
No, that's a completely different thing.
Okay.
He wasn't big then. He was not big at all.
Deadpool was like a fun character that people liked. He was not big at all. He got like a little mini series, nothing. Spider-Man, McFarlane got Spider-Man. They gave him his own title from Amazing Spider-Man. They gave Spider-Man. It had different covers. That kind of started people like, hey, what's this? X-Force. When Jim Lee's X-Men came out, that's the #1 selling book of all time. It's like 7.5 million copies or 8, because it had 5 different covers. And I remember I pre-ordered like 5 of each cover plus 10 of the gatefold cover. And when it came out, I still, not including the pre-sale, I still bought them off the shelf. It was like the thing to do. I had like 20 copies of it. I literally did in my house. I probably still have them. I remember giving them away to people, but that's what you did. You know what I mean? And you know, like Spider-Man #1 came bagged. There was nothing in it. It was just sealed. There was no like trading card or sticker or whatever. It just was bagged.
And there was all the different. There was the regular cover. Was the platinum cover. The gold cover.
The platinum one was like one per store. The gold and silver. I remember. I couldn't get the regular cover. I think I got the gold one from my guy, because I wasn't like 100% into comics at the time, and he knew me from baseball cards, so I got that. But like Johnny and our generation is the one that doesn't let anything go. Like we're keeping it going. So like, you know, our kids are gonna grow up with this stuff. Like that's why the He-Man Classic still comes out. There's nothing supporting He-Man at all. There's like a little comic book that barely comes out, but we keep it alive because we want it. It's a subscription service, you know.
Matty Collector.
The G.I. Joe comes and goes. They're making movies. The Transformer movies are so big. There's aisles of Transformers. There's gonna be aisles of Transformers forever.
But look at like you said, Devastator. That's totally all based on the older people. Like the Combiner Wars stuff, of course. I mean, it has no movie stuff, but that stuff has sold so much better than any of that movie stuff. And I know they have to do it because it's the movie, but people that buy that, like you're gonna get some of the kids, but you're not gonna get your collectors. And they don't seem to understand. They can never make those meet where they can make it both. You know, it's all or nothing.
G.I. Joe though is when that was the 25th anniversary line.
Yeah,
it was doing so well, and they scratched it when the movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
And they shouldn't have done that. They should have them go together. But they're like, oh, people are gonna get confused. Nobody's gonna get confused. They should have kept them both going. They scrapped it. It was so successful. but they scrapped it and they made all the movie figures and it killed the line.
And the movie figure probably was...
No, and the movie didn't do that well, and the toys didn't sell, but they should have just kept it going and like kept them together. But they're so afraid that they're gonna upset somebody or somebody's not gonna be able to figure it out. People will figure it out. Like you can have 2 different lines. It's okay. There's a line for us and a line for you guys. Like they don't understand that. So I know you've only been like collecting toys. Like collecting for a few years, right? Like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think it's like 3 or 4 years now.
So what made you like? Obviously, you played with toys as a kid. You appreciate it. But what I remember you when you coming in here, you'd buy like the Sonic comic.
When I first started coming in here, like a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what made you become like Mr. Craig from Craig Stuff?
Well, I guess when I first really started collecting toys, I was collecting Sonic toys because I still love Sonic the Hedgehog. It was kind of my introduction to collecting toys, and I started buying the comics, and I was buying video. I was also collecting video games at the time too. What are you
no, I'm looking at my root beer. I have my root beer, and I can't find it. I'm listening to you.
Okay. So I was just collecting a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog stuff, and I think I got everything. I almost felt like I got everything I could get reasonably priced. Everything else was going to be ridiculously overpriced on eBay from like the 90s, which I had, some of that stuff. But then I started realizing also this stuff isn't as good. It's not made very well. This is like I forget what company made it. Toy
Jazzwares made some of them. They were not good.
And they were garbage. And I still bought them because I love Sonic.
And plus, that's all there really was.
That's all there were exactly. So I still have some of my Sonic stuff displayed, but I started getting more into like Marvel Legends. I think the first full Marvel Legends that I got was when Iron Man 3 came out and the Iron Monger figure. So I got that. That was the first full set of Marvel Legends I had. I had some other ones before that, but I think I had like the X-Force Deadpool, and some of that other stuff. But that's kind of and working at Toys R Us, being around them constantly, it just makes I see them come in and I just like, oh, these are so awesome, and there's different things and some nostalgia, and just, that's what got me hooked on it, and now I can't stop.
Well, that's the problem. When I was at Toys R Us, I was at Toys R Us from like 94 through like 05, I think. I bought everything. I had everything because you know what? It's like, you're making the pizza. You're gonna eat it. It's right there,
Exactly.
And you can't help it. It's like fresh. It comes right out of the oven. It's gooey and it's cheap. Like you have to. You have to eat the pizza. You have to eat. I just dropped my root beer over the floor. Oh well, that's okay. It'll dry. But
paper towel.
When you're putting them out, like you open the case up, it's case fresh. You're the first one to see it in the entire aside from the person who packed it in the factory, like you're the one that's putting it on the shelf, and you see like there's only one of these per box. You're like, well, I have to get it. I need it. And then you get them all, and like I remember. In the 90s, I bought, because we used to cash, I don't know if it's still is at Toys R Us now. You could cash a check at the register.
No.
Okay? But you had to buy something. Whether it was people would just buy a soda or candy. Yeah. Actually, I remember when Toys R Us didn't sell sodas yet. So you had to buy like a candy or something. That sound is Johnny scrubbing the floor from the root beer. That, I don't know who dropped. So I remember I would always buy a Boba Fett figure because they were $5. He's my favorite character. I literally had like 30 Boba Fetts. Cause I would buy one every time they came in. I would just buy another one when I cashed my check. I had one hanging in my car. I had one like in my room. I had 2 full cases of Boba Fetts. So I probably still have a handful of them somewhere in my house, in my parents' house, in the attic or something. But I bought them because that's what you did when you have. It's like when you have access to it, you don't have to search for it. It's in your hands. You're like, exactly, I have to buy it.
That's how I feel.
And
people make fun of me at work when I see like the new toy come in, and I get so excited.
Yeah, but
and they're just like specifically recently when we had gotten one of the amiibos for the Nintendo. I told you about the amiibos. We had them just come in, and they were street dated. So I think we were putting them in the back, and my manager's looking at me, and I'm just like my eyes are like lit up, and he's just like, "You are so excited." I'm like, I'm really excited for these I've been waiting for them now.
It's I agree. I know exactly. I mean, I still do it. I mean, I have. It's like Christmas.
Yeah.
Like I remember, like it was after Sandy, and it was right when Prime, Optimus Prime was coming out, the masterpiece one at Toys R Us.
Yeah.
And doing whatever, and it was that week. What was that? Monday? Monday was Sandy.
I don't know. It was 3 years ago. I don't remember. I don't know the date.
I think it was Monday, and then around here it was just like you couldn't go anywhere. I mean, with the power lines down, and with
for those of you who don't live in the area, Hurricane Sandy was a big hurricane that like really hit New Jersey
hard.
Like three falls ago.
So like I mean, for like a week, like areas didn't have power, trees were down.
But Toys R Us was open.
Toys R Us was open.
What reminds me of Sandy though is during Sandy was when Disney bought Lucas.
Okay,
and I remember I couldn't post it online because I remember I think Jay Green actually texted me and said, "Hey," because a lot of people didn't have service. During that time is when Disney bought Lucas. Oh. That's how I remember Sandy. But go ahead.
No, so. It was, people in the gas stations weren't open, so it was basically rationing. People couldn't go anywhere. Like, they would wait on hours, for gas. You would sit online. And so that Saturday, like, my house was full with people because my parents' power was out, my in-laws, everybody was there. And Jay Green, his battery was out because he was in the car listening to, when there was no power. So he needed to get a new battery. So he jumped whatever. We went to Sears. We did that, whatever, and we had to get stuff for Scarlett. My daughter was still a baby.
Yeah, she was a few months old. Yeah. I remember Isabella was a few months old. Yeah.
So we went to Toys R Us. We went to Toys R Us over here in Wayne, and went there. And right there on the thing, they had like 3 Optimus Primes. It must have came in, and nobody was coming in because people didn't have like the gas to just go around.
The last thing they're doing is a cycle like yourself looking for an Optimus Prime.
Hey, it's close enough. So I was so happy when I found that. I was like, oh.
I loved that period because like I didn't have to be in my freezing cold house. And anytime people would call and whatever, I was just like, yeah, I'll come in, no problem. I don't need to freeze in my house.
Well, we had power like in the entire area. This strip had power. Like everything around us didn't. Like you had power, but we had power. And I remember Dunkin' Donuts next door. The line out the door for like 3 days was insane because there was another Dunkin' Donuts that was closed. They would send them their truck and they would still sell through it. It was nuts because there was nothing else open. In the deli, they ran out of bread, because you couldn't buy it. I mean, people you don't know what's going on, and like I said, the gas was crazy, and that's what you did, and it was nuts. But the fact of the internet takes away obviously the convenience is there. You can just buy what you want, but there was just something about taking that turn, going towards the toy aisle, and just what you're going to see. I kind of do it now because I'm not into toys anymore, and we don't carry that many here. We carry most of like the diamond stuff, but as far as toy lines, we don't get a lot in unless it's like Marvel Legends or whatever. But when I take my daughter in there and I go around the corner, it's cool to see all the turtles. I'm like, oh my god, they made a figure of this, and the Teen Titans stuff that she's into, or even the Star Wars stuff. I'm like, oh my god, look at that, because I don't search for it anymore because I'm not into it. So it is kind of like, to me, it's kind of new. And I like that feeling because you don't have that anymore. You guys go, no, I don't look at it because I'm so focused on the comic book.
Yeah.
And the business aspect of it. That kind of keeps me young, and whether she's looking for like a My Little Pony or the Teen Titans Go or a Turtle or Sophia the First, it's kind of neat because like the Imagine X stuff we didn't have.
Oh yeah,
that stuff's cool.
I love that stuff.
We didn't have that.
I would have loved to have.
You see, when we were kids, the figure you play with the same figure whether you were 3 or 13. Yeah. Now it's like, okay, this is for, 2 to 6. This is for. And they didn't have that. It was like all for nothing. You got it.
It makes sense. I don't understand why they need to,
No, it's fine that they do now.
Small parts.
Oh yeah, they do, but they're kind of neat because Imagine X stuff's kind of cool.
It is. It's awesome. Cool. I mean, I have it all. I mean, some of it's for Scarlett, some of it's for me. But those figures are awesome. I mean, those figures are, and they make all different ones. I mean, you have Clayface in that. You have the Doom,
the Legion of Doom, the Tower, whatever it is.
I can't remember the name of it.
Tower of Doom.
No, it's the
bubble.
Killer
Croc, and there's like
and
Bane comes with like a Bane car.
Yeah, well, they're gonna do. Well, they're coming out with the whole Justice for it. You know what I mean? Like the stuff.
That's
and,
so cool.
You know,
I love how
great.
they do Power Rangers now, but it's my Power Rangers.
Yeah, well, yeah, they do.
Okay.
So like
they
it's
did the Turtles line too, and they're very basic standard Turtles.
It's not Imaginext, but I think it's Play School.
Yeah, Play School.
Well, it's the same. Yeah, they do
basically the same thing. Yeah.
Well, it's like they have the Marvel ones like that too, and the Star Wars ones. You know.
What is it called?
Well, Star Wars started. It was Star Wars made those. Galactic heroes.
Yeah, they weren't articulated.
They weren't articulated, and then they started making like the Millennium Falcon for it, and then the Wampa, and I'm like, this is the AT-AT. It was cool. Like we didn't have that. We had Micro Machines.
Yeah.
Versions of Star Wars. They had you know what Micro Machines are?
I've heard the name before.
They're like they were big in the '80s with like cars. They were like these tiny little cars, and the guy in the commercial would talk really fast. And they had like the play sets were like a garage, but a whole city because you could. The cars were like the size of your thumbnail. And you can make, and they just, but they got licensing with Star Wars in the 90s, and they did Star Trek, they did all, so you get all these spaceships and everything, and that was big, because it would be like Jabba's, like, it'd be like a head, a Star Wars character head, you would open it up, it'd be Jabba's palace.
I had a Godzilla set like that.
Yeah, it was similar to that, but they had, I remember Endor, they had all the stuff, and like it was.
And then they started coming out with like little figures for it too, like they were really tiny, but.
Or you get like a gift pack of like 50 different Star Wars ships. And it was like a total exclusive. Oh, these things right here. You see that's a Stormtrooper head.
Oh,
It opens up. The Darth Vader head opens up to Bespin. So that was cool.
Oh yeah, these look just like I said, it was a Godzilla. I think it was Godzilla's face, and then it had like Rodan and a volcano.
Yeah, I think I know which one you're talking. They had a bunch the Godzilla line.
Yeah, so it's cool. So to go back to you, Craig, before I drop my soda. On collecting toys, you just.
I feel like I just kind of fell into it. I mean, I've always liked.
You know what it is too,
toys.
though.
I've had them.
You're 24 now, so you started getting into around 20 years old.
Yeah, and I've had my own income.
You have your own income.
Exactly.
So that's why, like, I get in arguments a lot with the comic book industry changing, and people are like, oh, I hate this, but it's like, yeah, they would gladly trade one of me or Johnny for 10 of you, because chances are we're gonna stop because we're married, we have kids, we're gonna have a house, we're gonna have responsibilities, anything, health insurance. You're just you, and that's it, and you're gonna be you for another 5 or 6 years. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna have, you're out of college, high school, whatever. You got a job, you have disposable income. You're gonna buy more than we technically are. You know what I mean? My generation would, because
it's the only reason I can afford.
But not even affording it, it's just we don't have time. Like we don't have time to do this stuff. Johnny's an exception because he's a nut. But my generation, they're kind of casual. Yeah, I'll buy this, I'll buy that. I'll come in once a month. Where you can come in 2-3 times a week. So your generation now can buy more than we can because of your lifestyle. Because you're not settled down. I know you got girls lined up down the street, but you're not married or anything like that. No kids that we know of.
Them off
no kids that we know of. So that's why it's changing now. But I noticed. The toys are coming back because for the last couple of years, even here, because the comic book market's really hot right now with all the movie stuff, the statues are almost gone, and the toys kind of went away. Hot toys is, no pun intended, hot.
Yeah.
Or I should say pun intended, hot. I don't know. Anyway, they're hot. Okay, they're expensive.
Yeah.
But it's bringing people back in. Pops, people buy Pops like crazy. The reaction figures, the DC Direct lines, whether it's the Arkham games or the New 52 Capullo line or the Batman animated series line is huge. So that stuff is bringing you guys back in because you guys didn't experience that first time because you guys either played with them or you were too young for it. So then now I can see it. It's not going to be obviously as big, and then. There's a movie coming out in December called Star Wars, and of course we all know what happens with Star Wars. You get aisles and aisles of toys.
We're actually Toys R Us is going to be doing a midnight.
Of course you are.
Thing. Yeah.
September probably, right?
I think it's in September. Yeah. There's actually a countdown clock right by the aisle that's just counting down the days.
I didn't.
Yeah, when you go in next time, it's right.
That's
right
why.
in front of the
that's
aisle,
why.
Under Darth Vader.
Disney bought Lucas. That's why Disney bought Marvel because they need boys' toys. Because if you notice before all this. They had aisles of Disney princesses.
Yeah, you were telling me, and now Cars was a big.
Cars, that's why they made a car sequel. Yeah. Because you go to Walmart or whatever, there's a aisle of Cars because you get all generations. Toy Story sold, obviously because Toy, but it never had like a boys line. because Mickey and they don't sell like that.
No.
So they bought Marvel for the licensing. Star Wars, they're gonna have Star Wars toys for the next 80 years because you're gonna have aisles of it.
So, I mean,
I remember
big time.
Star Wars was so big in the 90s and it started dwindling down. I'll never forget like 2000, 2001-ish maybe. Star Wars was so bad, it literally was like one tiny little half gondola end cap with like 4 items. That's when the exclusive tie interceptor came out for the Power of the Force. I think it was 01. Star Wars was dead, and then Episode 2 came out, I guess, and it went back up, but it kind of went away.
Yeah.
But Disney's not gonna let it happen because they're gonna make a movie every year. You know, with the movies inside the sequels. Like Rogue One and all that stuff. So Star Wars is going to be around forever. Marvel's going to be around forever. You know, like they're just making the lines bigger and bigger and bigger, the toy lines and T-shirts, and so the kids are going to know what it is. I mean, the kids don't play with toys now. The window for a kid playing with a toy now is like, actually playing with it.
Yeah.
Is like probably like, because of Imagine X type of stuff, maybe like 2.5, 3 to like maybe 6 or 7. And then they go, we played with toys almost up until high school. Like when you were in junior high, when we were younger, you still played with toys. I mean, you might not be like letting people know, but when you were home, you had toys. Yeah. Until you kind of got in high school, or right before high school, and you kind of like disappeared from it.
I don't think, like I said, I don't think I let people know.
No, but
like I definitely remember in like middle school, I had my little Digimon toys.
Yeah,
and,
but
Yu-Gi-Oh!
So now it's especially with cell phones and iPads, it's very different.
Yeah, I think and especially like in boys and girls, I think definitely it's even shorter for that for girls. I think before they just completely get out of toys too.
Yeah, because they don't play with dolls like
anymore.
They used to.
Yeah, all that stuff they just go on.
Barbie's dying. Barbie used to be.
Well, you know why? Barbie's in that same category, almost like kind of like Superman and Fantastic Four is. It's kind of like it's a standard. Everybody buys Barbie, but the kids want like edgy. They want Bratz. They want that Monster High.
Monster High, and Bratz is coming back.
So yeah, because they got sued big time. That's why. That's why they kind of went out. It's disappeared. But Mattel, its biggest section is Fisher Price. Okay, they make all the preschool stuff and of course Power Wheels.
Yeah.
And they have Barbie, and Barbie, Barbie kind of like McDonald's. They never lost money, and all of a sudden one year they just lost money. Like what's going on? It's because of Bratz. Because the kids are getting edgier. So the moms and the grandmothers are buying them Barbies, to have, but the kid wants the new edgier thing. So Barbie, it's always gonna be around, but it's just not that big. It's not gonna take over the whole store like it used to. And Bratz, like 10 years ago or so, really, it might have been longer than 10 years ago. I remember when they came out, it was big.
It was, and then with the lawsuit with Mattel, and then that went, and then.
Yeah, but like Monster High's been big for a few years.
That's Mattel too, so at least they have.
It's Mattel,
I was talking to a coworker the other day saying how I think Bratz was the first thing the alternative to Barbie that I can remember. Well,
I remember Toys R Us there's 2 things you had to pay attention to, especially during the holidays, was when you had workers, especially overnight crew. One person had to do the game wall, because board games were the big gift item, and the other one was aisle 13C, which was Barbie. You had to have a Barbie guy all the time, and that's all you did with Barbie, because Barbie was so big, and the game wall was so important for sales, and it's completely different now. But Barbie, it was like Barbie could have had its own store. Barbie's like Batman now. It was just that. It's just dwindling. Because they're changing.
Just to go the game wall. Okay, the best way to put it: go to Totowa. Think of Totowa store. Okay. Go in and go to the right and go to the wall to your right. Right when you come in the door.
Yeah. On the right of the wall, they kind of like overstock. It's like.
They have like the remote control cars and stuff. Okay. Right there it's like the cards. They have candy and stuff, and like they have like cards.
But the wall.
The wall along the outside of the building.
Down to the back?
Pretty much all the way from like a little bit in the front, because there was like it was when you went in it was seasonal, and then they had like coloring books and stuff, and then it wasn't a big area. Then from there to pretty much the back of the store were board games.
Ceiling the floor with board games.
Yep.
And this was not anymore, obviously.
No. It's like
it's still set up like that. Like,
but
that store hasn't changed much.
But it's the same set. Like it's still like the same footprint, and that was board games. Just think that entire, and it wasn't just like they go up to here now. Like it was up to the top. You know what I mean? Like
nobody plays board. Like they're not.
You don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
What are you gonna? You know what? Board games really shifted. I remember when the CNET came out, and that was like that
Those
came out.
Cool. Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, okay, this is different because DVDs were getting hot. And then once the handheld games really kicked in, because Game Boy was big, but it was, not everybody had one.
And you couldn't play with each other unless you had a link cable.
Yeah, so that didn't come out for a while.
Yeah.
So once the handheld games really kicked in, and then like N64 and PS2, PS1, PS2 came out, it changed everything, and the board game just went, especially internet, because people now are online chatting, and at the time they were on AOL, like messaging each other, whatever you call it.
But you see, it doesn't really explain. Like some of it does, like video games and stuff.
Families don't sit down to play games anymore. You know what I mean? You don't, because they'll just download an app, and you can play like Words with Friends or something like that on your phone.
Yeah, I guess so.
You don't need to get a game. I mean, every now and then there is a game that kind of pops up out of nowhere, and everybody buys it. But in games too, especially at the holidays, it was an easy gift. You never went out to buy a board game.
I think it still is an easy gift, I would say.
It is, but you never, everybody in the world had Monopoly or Scrabble, but you never went to go buy it. You just had it because you probably got it as a gift. Yeah. You know what I mean? You never ever went and go, hey, let's go get a Monopoly game, unless you needed it because something was missing, or you had a party. You got this as a gift, and you had Boggle, all those games, you had them.
Monopoly, Scrabble, Clue. Twister. What is it? Operation, Mousetrap.
That type of stuff. That was all staple. You always had them. Ants in the Pants for the younger kids.
Candyland. Cooties.
Candyland. Oh. That was the big stuff.
The last big board game I can remember, at least working there was a game called Pop the Pig.
Yep.
Did you have that one?
No, I remember it though. I remember.
Okay. Yeah, it would just
I remember when
you feed him and then his belly explodes.
Oh, really?
I remember when Elefun came out. That was a big game. Elefun. The Mystery Date or whatever was huge. There was a Clarissa Explains It All game. Like I remember each season had a big game, and the same thing happened with Matchbox and Hot Wheels. Now they just buy the cars. When we were younger, you had all these like Crisscross Crash. You had all these play sets that you built.
They still make them.
They do, but now they just want the cars. Like the collectors are.
Well, that's because I mean, like again, it's because the kids don't do it. So I want a car. So I mean, I had cars when I was a kid. I had a lot of them, but I was never into it.
So we made it in my backyard.
But the thing is, I got it was like we had them, and then like I still have them, but I never like it was never like I'm gonna collect this forever. You know what I mean? Like I was never into it, like because I had cars I think before doing the action figures. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we all because again I remember they're inexpensive, and it's one of those gifts you give somebody that you don't know them. You just get invited to a party and you just bring like 5 Hot Wheels cars.
Well, this is the thing you're not gonna know. Like when we were kids, you would go to a candy store. They would have Matchbox in a display case, and it would be numbered, and you say, I want number 24.
I don't remember this. I don't know what you're talking about.
See, we had this here. They had a display thing. You said, I want number 24, and you would get it. Like, they had them. That's how they sold them. I mean, like, you didn't go to the toy store.
Well, in my little town, I probably didn't have
one. Well, I mean, yeah, but that's the way they did. I remember going to different places, and, because Matchbox because now they're owned by Hasbro, both of them. Matchbox
Mattel.
And, Mattel. Matchbox and,
Hot Wheels.
Yeah, Mattel was Hot Wheels. Mattel bought Matchbox like years ago.
But yeah, because that's what
Matchbox was all
kind
first.
Of dying actually. I know.
Yeah,
Matchbox. Everyone still calls them.
Yeah.
People come in and say, "Where are the Matchbox cars?"
Well, they have a separate line still.
Cars.
Yeah.
They have some Matchbox ones
it's
still.
Just not nearly like Hot Wheels.
No,
Matchbox is almost like gone.
Yeah.
But Matchbox was the standard. It came out first.
Yeah.
Hot Wheels was like the young kid that just got hot, and all of a sudden it just took off. So. I remember like 10 years ago, Matchbox was barely around. It was always Hot Wheels. But just from being around it with your parents and your grandparents, you just said Matchbox because that's just what they're,
Yeah, what everyone says.
And the Hot Wheels, came. We had them all. We probably had more Matchbox and Hot Wheels, just from our time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I remember we had like a just carrying case, and they had.
Well, yeah, the
tray you take out and you put all the cards.
The soft case.
Yep.
I mean, I had plenty of them, but I remember I had one of those carpets.
Yep.
With the roads on it or whatever. Yeah. I don't think I had many of the actual tracks. I don't think I really had any of those.
We were big in the electronic cars. They go upside down.
The slot racer kind of thing.
Slot racers, and they would glow in the dark.
Well, yeah, the one
Tycho's.
Tycho is always
like whatever, and it would every year there'd be a big. And you'd get the remote control cars. Nobody bought them, but for Christmas or your birthday, you'd get like the big hot remote control. Like remember the claw with the truck with the claws come out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Animal? Was it the Animal?
Yeah, the Animal. Yeah. If you ever get a chance, you can see all the commercials on YouTube. Just go type in like toy commercial, and it will show them. I think people probably put loops of them on there, whether it's Star Wars or just anything like in humanoids and like all that, Centurions, all that stuff was just fun because they all had commercials. That's the only way you knew what was coming out. I used to film cartoons, when I was younger, just to film the commercial because I wouldn't pause it because you could pause the tape. I would want the commercials because one, it kind of put me when it came out, and two, that's the only time you saw the commercials because if you missed it, you missed it. You can't look it up. Like now you go to YouTube or Facebook and there's a trailer comes up. You didn't get that when you were a kid. I wanted a cool commercial for the newest Turtles line or whatever you want to watch. You had to wait for it to come on TV.
That's true.
I don't remember many toy commercials as a kid.
Yeah.
Like I remember, I think it was in the Power Ranger podcast. Dave was talking about Power Ranger where the Megazord punched through the thing, and I'm like, I have no idea. I don't remember that. I know Dave's a couple of years older than me, but like that one just like flew over my head. You'd think I would remember that.
Well, like
I don't know.
The 80s were pretty much the main time of like the height of toy commercials, because by the 90s they kind of it was different stuff and like the standards changed. They were you didn't have like cartoons. Like we had our cartoons after school, before school, after school, on Saturday mornings. A little bit on Sunday mornings, but that's it. You didn't have 24 hours. I mean, later you had the USA Cartoon Express that, because like from 2 to 5, maybe you would have on like Channel 5 or Channel 11, they would play your after school cartoons. And then on USA, they would play from like 5 to 7. They would play replay like all the Hanna-Barbera tunes, Jabberjaws or Great Bape or anything like that, Captain Caveman. But we didn't have that thing, and so your Saturday mornings was that big. That's when they did, all the cartoons for all the commercials for these things. And when they changed the rules kind of with it where they had to be more educational shows. So that's why they kind of went all the way from like the ones that are still on Saturday mornings are all like educational ones. So they don't do cartoons anymore. And then they all have the other ones like, Cartoon Network is on 24 hours. You don't have to.
You didn't have that.
Or Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I didn't have Cartoon Network as a kid, actually, at all.
Well, some
no, we didn't either. It wasn't here either. Yeah, we didn't have it on
until. I used to watch like Arthur.
Well, yeah, PBS, yeah. Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, now you can do it just on demand.
Yeah, you can just watch whatever you want.
Yeah, you don't even have to worry about whenever you want it.
Like I said,
or Netflix or whatever.
Netflix, YouTube, you can watch seasons of it. It was different. So different generations, different upbringings. We all still love toys. So I know we're like years apart, but it's kind of cool because you love the same things we love. It's just a different aspect, and you were brought up differently with it. So. It's very cool.
Yeah. He's just waiting for us to die because then he can get all our stuff.
Yeah, all our stuff. So. But thanks for coming on, Craig. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. And Johnny, of course, Johnny's always here, so I'm not going to thank you for being here.
Hello.
And if you ever want to BS about toys or comics, just come by the shop. We love to do it. We do a little bit too much sometimes. But so I love all the feedback on the podcast. Appreciate it. Our numbers keep going up, and it's really cool. The messages we're getting on it. Thanks for love, guys. Appreciate it. So. For all of us here at Zapp Comics Radio Podcast, Craig, Johnny, I'm Corey. See you guys soon.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Zapp Comics Radio Podcast. Zapp Comics Radio Podcast. Zapp Comics